What's up, what's up, what's up, y'all? We are here. Many Hands Podcast is back in the fold, doing what we do best. Some of it's talking trash. Some of it's talking enlightenment. Some of it's talking community. A lot of it's talking business. So we're going to get together once again just to dabble in some of these hot topics that are out there that are thought-provoking, that appeal to all of our sensibilities. You know, if there's an element of humanity that's left out of a lot of conversations, and a lot of things are surface level, and we kind of disagree with that philosophy. Just to put it out there, we want people to feel something, and there's a reason why we're doing this. It's not because we like to hear ourselves talk. It's because we do have something to say, and we do have actions to take. So it all starts with the conversation and bringing things together. My name is Oriel Ross McKinney. I'm with O Ross Enterprises, and I am known as the Small Business Engine. I do tactical business development, strategic development, and I carry you from soup to nuts when it comes to developing your business, your look, your brand, and all of that practical elements to business building. So, crew is here. Who's up?
Hello, everyone. It's Rio of Rio Fitness, your personal fitness trainer, fitness expert, model actor. Thank you all for joining us today. Hope everybody's doing well and in safe quarters. Feel free to reach me regarding any type of training services. So you can reach me at riowinfrey@gmail.com, bookrio.com, or riowinfrey.com.
Yeah, we have it's Antoine Watts, founder of Personal Injury Professionals, partner in Keep Calm Services. We are a medical marketing and attorney referral service, but we also care about people over profit. So you can reach us at pipinjury.com. You can also reach us at Keep Calm Orlando. We're on every platform that you need us.
Hey, what's going on, people? It's your boy B. McKinney, McKinney Brands. I am a partner with McKinney Brands, real estate, travel, business development, entrepreneurship. We like to take entrepreneurs and help them grow, help them develop themselves as well as their businesses, and also your resident D&I, diversity and inclusion expert on the team. So find me at brian@mckinney.brands.com. Looking forward to catching up.
Here's your other tidbit. If you hit up manyhandspodcast.com, you'll find all of us. So we're out there.
One spot.
One spot.
One band, one sound.
Okay. So why are we called Many Hands? And it's because many hands make light work. It's just a premise of what we do. And the greatest of us is equal to the least of us. So fellas, let's start doing this heavy lifting. Okay. What we want to talk about today, well, first of all, what we left off last session was, it was called Unspoken. And that's what's not being said throughout this COVID-19 crisis. When you have a pandemic and it affects the world, other things are put in the spotlight. And not that they're not always there, but when they become so pronounced that you can taste it, it's incredible. So one of the things that it's really highlighted is the disparity between who gets care and who doesn't. What we want to do. What are the unifying factors in our mission for greatness, for humanity? So in this episode called Unifying Factors, where's the common ground that we all stand on in order to build and develop? So my first question is, what do you think has been exposed the most from COVID-19, and how did it really highlight some of the imbalances that we have?
I think it comes a lot to the haves and the have-nots, right? What we've seen is that folks that have to go to work, that are in essential, positions or essential functions, where they're bus drivers or they're working in a grocery store or, whatever the case is. Those folks are the ones that we're seeing are getting infected the most. They have the highest rates of infection. And there are people that have the luxury of working from home or not working at all, and staying at home. And it's because they have or had the opportunity versus, again, like I said, those have-nots.
Yeah, the biggest, I think that in any civil war that's taking place in history, it's as the disparity of the haves and have-nots have grown. Those are the kind of things that ignite, that'll gaslight. And that's when, honestly, that's what we're trying to get in front of, because it's not a solution that we want to happen, but there's an underlying tension and animosity that we can't deny.
Absolutely.
Right. It's unfortunate because what we're doing is like pretty much what we're hitting on is you're seeing still a division. Like I said, we're trying to find some way to be unified. Unfortunately, I feel like there are some facts that are there, but we're just not seeing them right now. I think right now, like you said, it's all about just it being exposed. I don't think there's really a set plan. I'm not even sure at this point what to do or what they're even doing, because it's a humbling experience overall, I think, for the world, but it's still such a division. We're just seeing that so clearly now. It's unfortunate, but it's so divided.
Yeah, I challenge. I challenge. I think that it's intentional. I think there is a plan. I think the plan is for the haves to remain that way. I think that the threat of people who don't look like you, people who don't sound like you, people who aren't from where you're from, I think that the majority can't accept that, and I think the minority is pushing that. So I think a lot of it is premeditated.
But even like, we all know there's a racial component to it. But, the funniest thing that really made me think about this during this pandemic is, since I was a little kid, we talked about that middle class, right? Like the country is stronger when the middle class is stronger. And we don't have that right now. It's literally the haves and the have-not. The middle ground almost doesn't exist. And again, when you look at that, especially when you start looking at the essential positions, Brian, like you said, the essential positions, and then just who that entailed. I would talk to a lot of my friends and they were like, look, we all say have 6 months of bills, but most people have 1 month. Like this middle, like, again, I can't speak on this any stronger. This country is stronger when the middle class exists. And exists at a highly effective rate. And right now, we just don't have it.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the, have 6 months of savings, and that's a principle that we all live on. I think I mentioned this before. You would think that the big businesses and the politicians that are critiquing those who don't would have. But in essence, 1 month of business, everybody needs to be bailed out. So, where are the principles actually enforced?
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think that's a good point. I think they said that the majority of the country can't sustain a $400 emergency, right? So depending on who you are, $400 might be a tire on your car, right? And for somebody else, it might be an electric bill. And the reason we see this gap growing is because I think those who are in that upper level, they want it's a lot of greed, and it's less of that human factor, and when it's just let me grab up as much as I can and leave, it doesn't matter who else is being left out. I think you start to see this, and when you see a pandemic like this, I think there's some valid validity to your point in that there is a plan. It just doesn't include everybody, and by sort of confusing and sending out mixed messages and not acting, that inaction is an action in itself, and I think you see that as playing out right now.
And I don't mean to cut anybody off real quick, but one of the things that I've always, and we've always heard growing up is that trickle down economics. oh, you give it to ones who create jobs, and to that 1% that really knows how to build business, and they're going to create jobs and boost the economy. But what ended up happening is that trickle down economics turned into just complete greed, right? Like you said, Brian, like, okay, these tax breaks. What was it? Kmart, they took the huge tax breaks a couple years ago, and then when people showed up for work, the doors were locked. So they took the money and then fired the people still, right? So that whole trickle down concept, it doesn't exist anymore. It did at one time, and even then, I don't think it was used as efficiently as it could have been, because greed will always exist, right? But now it's just full out. It's just deception.
Yeah, it was highly disingenuous. It was just highly disingenuous from concept right down. It never really played out the way it was. Complete theory, no practicality.
And let's look at who's making the rule, right? They're making. You think the rules are meant not to give advantage to the people who are writing those rules?
Right. Well, that's the nepotism part, right? So you could trickle it down to give it to Joe off the street, or you're just gonna hire your son-in-law.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Your daughter.
I said that with our last podcast that we did. That's the first thing that I touched on was greed, and it all comes down to the money. And that's exactly what we're seeing. It all comes down to the money. And that's why I said it's going to be, as far as unified, man, I just don't see that. Obviously, where we are in this state, I don't see that happening anytime soon as them bridging the gap. But I do agree with you though. There is a plan. We're just not included in that plan, or a lot of us aren't included in that plan.
So as we continue the conversation, I want us to inject concepts of what should happen. I'm going to pivot a little bit, threw that word in there for the guys. It's a little inside joke right there. Twan, before I pivot, what did you have to say?
No, go ahead. I kind of lost that thought, but I love what Rio, that last part he said, but go ahead and we'll get back to it, because I had a question to pose to the group, but it'll come back to me.
Okay. All right. I'm going to hold you to it. It was, he was talking about greed and where we're going with that. So when it comes to what we're experiencing right now, and then the shift, you realize that there's the politics of disposability. So when the dust settles and, maybe you don't term it as a disaster anymore, and you're telling the tale, you're going to find out who mattered and who was sacrificed.
Mm-hmm.
How do we change? Because we already know that's going to happen. And we already know that, based on your hue, you're going to, who was sacrificed. And just, I'm originally from New York City, so I already know several people that have passed away from COVID-19, and it's hard. And that there were some decisions that had to be made, and it didn't result in their lives being saved. So what do you think it's going to look like when the dust settles and we discover who mattered, who didn't matter? What would you do differently if you were in a position of power, whether that's the administrator of a hospital or a politician that could delve out dollars? What do you think we should do differently so that people matter?
I don't have any specific, plan as far as like the detail of it, but I would say I would definitely start with that portion that was really affected. I would start, I don't want to say the bottom in a negative way, but I would start there and then kind of, work the way up. But unfortunately, who knows, not to be a negative Nancy, but I think once the dust settles, you're not going to see that. But me personally, I would start there to see what's mainly been affected, who's really truly hit, and then just go there and come up with something.
So, all right. So I want to throw this in there, right? Really, what we should do different is look at our leadership all the way through and through, right? Our votes, we need to make our votes count. Now, look, when I say this, please, people, get out and vote. I really don't care who you vote for. Just practice the process, and especially for minorities in this country to understand that we didn't always have this privilege and this right. And I don't even want to call it, it is our fundamental right, to vote. So we need to exercise that fully. But we have to start with leadership, and we have to start with holding these people accountable. And one of the things that I want to talk about, and this ties in perfectly, is one of the things that I kept hearing about when they wanted to reopen Georgia was, oh, they're trying to, they're trying to really impact Black and brown communities, right? Why would they open up in Georgia and Atlanta? But I fundamentally believe it always comes back to money. It always will come back to money. And in order for us to change that, to have to value people over profit, that starts with leadership. If you do not implement that at the levels, and I'm not talking about the highest levels of government and leadership, I'm talking about your county. See, people don't even go vote for their county commissioners. They only want to go vote for the presidential elections. It starts in your local communities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's excellent point. So, because what I want us to leave, and I'm going to reiterate this point, when we close out the show, let's get some action items in place. Let's charge our community with the next steps, because then what's the difference, right?
Right.
And we do enough chit chatting on the side. But for me, when I think of the disposability, what we've shown for that's on display are the people who are immediately at risk. So our homeless, how are we changing how we're dealing with our homeless population? Because they can't shelter in place. So what does that look like? There was a young Black doctor, and when he went out to test the homeless population for COVID, I don't know if you guys saw that story. I wish I remembered the city that he was in. He was arrested, assumed that he was up to no good. This is a doctor volunteering his time, doing more than frontline work, So, the homeless population at our bus stops and our train stations, how do you control this sightless disease when you have, a strong population that can't shelter in place? I think frontline workers, they're seeing the inequality now, where I feel like as a preeminent nation, we should be able to have PPE. There might be a delay because maybe, let's give people the benefit of the doubt that we were behind. Let's say we're already behind in addressing it, but not now. So everybody should have PPE. That should not be where doctors and nurses are using the same equipment, protective equipment, 14 days and such, not being able to use the bathroom. They can't take a break. I mean, it's too much. The other population, undocumented agricultural workers. Let's be real how we get our food. Let's be real what the supply chain and the food chain looks like.
Right.
Keep it funky. Let's be real. Important part. And what about our prison system, where, the prison system has just become like this vector of disease, and, they're busing them out to dig mass graves. How do you control infection in that kind of scenario? What could be done differently with any one of those groups of society?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, to an earlier point, it's people over profits, right? Number one, the PPE, yeah, come on. Like, we should be able to produce enough PPE that anybody who needs it or wants it can have it. And not unlike, the tests that everybody's supposed to get tested if they want to get tested. We know that is not true as well. And I think that, again, comes back to a lack of leadership and a lack of a plan. And then also, when you gut the organizations that put those plans in place and create that structure, it does make it harder to move forward. And then I think the other side of that is just honoring people and not allowing people to be disposable. When you say with the food distribution and that process, we have people going to meat plants because they have to, and the companies are saying, look, if you don't come, you're not going to get unemployment, you're going to lose your job, not get unemployment, and then you're going to be in a worse spot. So you got to come. And then you see they're being impacted and getting infected at incredibly high rates, which, how does that come back to us and how we get our food?
One of the things I know that, you mentioned about the homeless population. I was watching a story the other day in San Francisco, and I believe, and I apologize if I'm not 100% accurate on this, but I believe that San Francisco itself is a sanctuary city. And the homeless, I would be very interested to see and research how they're handling that, because the homeless population there is a really high rate. But I had a conversation with someone, and they said that even in the city of San Francisco, they were addressing that ahead of everywhere else in the country. And instead of us borrowing from that and really mimicking what they're doing to get it under control, we just look at homeless as a dismissed population. We look at prisoners as a dismissed population. There is no, like, we are people, all right? The humanity has to lie within us. You cannot just throw people away because you don't approve of who they are. That is not for you to judge. You just can't throw people away. So we really have to look at the prison system, because in Mississippi, I'm seeing it. You know, these prisoners are in the worst conditions already. Yeah. And they have prisoners in the Mississippi prison system that are dying at unbelievable rates, and no one is doing anything about it.
Right.
You know, it just amazes me.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen 13, Ava DuVernay's documentary on the 13th Amendment, then you don't understand why the prison system flourishes the way it was intended to.
Right.
And that's the scary part. This is, you know, they're getting labor at 10 cents an hour, and all the major companies that participate.
Well, we talked about that on the show before, because on our platform, because about 15 years ago, somebody approached me about being a partner in a private prison system. And the way they pushed it was like, man, look, this is like it's not going to be, lower class citizens being punished. This is going to be like an optional prison option. And I just didn't feel right about it. So I stepped away from it. Next thing you know, it's exactly what I thought it was going to be. It was poor and disenfranchised people being sent to those prisons, and they profiting off of those prisoners. And I didn't know that was a business. Call me young and naive at the time. I mean, I was 28 years old at the time. So I just didn't know that the prison system was as big of a business as it is. And again, that gives them the ability to throw people away, because again, they see profit over people.
Yeah, you wonder if you participated in that business deal, would you be in a position to create change, or is it so systematically designed that we're still with our hands tied?
Right, and in that group, in that dynamic, I don't think I would have had the ability to do anything different. Right, like the way they had, I mean, it was already set. Right, they were just trying to get people. At that point, it was trying to get funded. Right. That's really what it was.
And right, keep it real. Right, this system it's working exactly the way it was designed, and to undo it means undoing, a couple hundred years of this, because this started really, if you go back to slavery and the end of slavery.
The blueprint.
Right, that's when they wrote the blueprint, and they have continued to perfect it so that it doesn't slow down, and it hasn't slowed down. And it's unfortunate, again, the haves and have-nots, right?
Right. Well, the question has to change also. So what I mean by that is it has to go from how can I make money off of this? How can I profit to how can I help? And then from there needs to be a plan in place. Right now, this administration just historically is all about how can I make money off of this? COVID-19, first thing, how can we profit? You saw the articles about who was investing in what. It's always about money. Money is the root of all evil and continues to do so. But like O was saying earlier, it's great to have these, silent protests and so forth. But yeah, I mean, action, if not now, I don't know when, but action has to start. It has to be taken. There has to be a plan in place and detail to it. But that's the question we have to kind of ask ourselves going forward.
And maybe that leads us to our, because again, you're very big on these action steps, right? Because we can keep having these conversations all we want, right? But maybe that leads us into our future guests, right? Having local politicians on that we know are not about just the verbiage, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
about the action and how we can get more people to support them and how we can support them. Because we all know this in business, the number one thing you do when you see something successful is you reverse engineer, right? And you say, how do we get, how can we get to that point, right? Like, let's start here and then work backwards and see how we can get there and get to that financial gain. But again, we really have to hold people accountable that money is great, but let's have some real humanity here and care about some people who can't care for themselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I feel on this, the action step that we should take, I know I haven't, but I believe you gentlemen have read, I saw the movie, but Brian Stevenson's book.
Just mercy.
Just Mercy. So let's get in touch with that organization.
Right.
And let's see, how could you help on a grassroots level? And that could mean information sharing, staying informed. It could mean, financial donations. His client base, can't contribute. So, as a nonprofit, he needs those donations. His organization does rather. So, I'd like to put that also on our action item list, along with charging our community to vote and, going from there.
And real quick, I just want to give a shout out to Brian on this. This week there was something that happened, and Brian, I wish if you could talk about it. There was something that happened, and you actually tagged some people in it to bring it to their attention. Because again, we need to reach out to these people who actually have the power, the energy, and the wherewithal to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, there's been a lot of attention, and rightly so, this week on a national level about Ahmaud Arbery, the young man in Georgia who was, just senselessly, shot down and lynched in February. Well, we're just finding out about it now, but there's been a lot of momentum and attention brought to that this week. And there was actually someone brought to my attention that earlier this week here in Orlando in Central Florida, I think Osceola County, there was a young man who was, again, senselessly shot down by the cops. He went in, and I have to look for his name, but he went in and there was a little girl who was stabbed and bleeding. And so he goes in there and he's afraid and just doesn't know what to do, but somebody had already called 911 and the cops. So the cops come in the house and he's got blood on him, but he didn't do it. He was actually, I think, maybe the boyfriend, the brother,
the boyfriend of the
yeah. And he was just trying to help, and they came in, shoot first, ask questions later, and this man is no longer here, and he's 21 years old. And so what I did was I tagged Ben Crump on it. I know, again, he's got his hands full with Ahmaud Arbery right now, but come on, man.
So Mr. Crump is a prominent civil rights attorney, and he's based, I believe, in Tallahassee. So, so that was important to bring him in the fold. Good move.
Yeah, it's so necessary, and you find out that the cop who did the shooting is the only one who shot, discharged a weapon, and he'd been on the job, since December. What are we, 5 months into the year, so 6 months on the job. It's senseless, man, and they got to stop, looking at us as less than human, because I think that makes it easier for them in their minds to do what they do.
Right.
So hopefully, Attorney Crump will get involved in this thing.
And that was the reason I brought it up, because we had talked about, action steps, figures who are actually doing the work, right? And we really need to be more in tune to the movement, not just, again, when something happens, right? We need to be in tune with the movement consistently until there is some change.
Right, because that's our whole point. We're the unifying factors. Like, there's been historically, a Black agenda, and then it continues to, fall apart. And it's because of, I think, the lives that we lead. Not that the issues aren't as important, but they become more or less important based on socioeconomics, right? Which in and of itself is wrong. That could mean a couple things. You're selfish. You've been so in that class passed down from generations, you forget, or you don't believe in the theory that we subscribe to, is the greatest of us and the least of us are equal. Right. And so there's a lot of things that go with that. Did you forget were you there and you forgot where you came from? Did you work so hard to get out of that situation that you don't even want a reminder of it? Are you so busy building a ladder that you don't have time for where somebody else might be until you become 13 years a slave or something, and that's the reality of it, is that we have to, regardless of our station, so to speak, there has to be a unifying factor that keeps us on the agenda. And not even funny, but so now with COVID-19, you're seeing now more racism directed at the Asian population. Now, when racism is directed more so, there's also the inclination, you believe the inclination that it's at Black people, and we can't look to our Asian brothers and sisters or anybody else to support. Now, where do we stand as a community? Are we speaking out against that? Because it's like people create terminology to defend their case, right? So like, oh, this is reverse racism. That's crap, right? Racism is racism, no matter who it's addressed to, right? So we start creating all this language just so that, we feel validated, okay? Right. So where do we stand when it's against somebody else? And, do we owe anybody else anything? Because people don't stand for us. People rather die rich and white. I mean, poor and white than rich and Black, right? That's just, I wasn't the first person to say that, right?
Right.
So that's just, it's almost like the stigma. There's nothing worse than being.
Yeah, I think we stand for what's right. At the end of the day, I mean, obviously, being a Black man and African American here, we have our own dealings that we need to work through. And I did want to say this earlier also, we need to start seeing these things as issues versus trends. We have a habit of following trends versus, attacking the issue. But at the end of the day, though, we need to focus on doing what's right. So yeah, the Asian community definitely had a lot going on, and as far as being ridiculed and all this with the COVID-19, but me personally, I would want to stand for what's right. So if it's affecting just people, yeah, I'd be all on board to do what it takes.
And I'm upset that I cannot remember this MLK quote verbatim, but basically saying that if you stand for injustices anywhere, that if you stand for injustices anywhere, oh my God, I can't remember. But basically what he was saying was, just because something's not happening to you, you might want to pay attention to it, because eventually it will. And we really do all need each other. Like we really do, right? And I don't have my
so
right now, but
your quote is, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
There we go. Right. And the simplest of terms, right? That's a simple statement, but it means so much. It's so profound. And that's the thing is, we talked about this in the last podcast as well. People only care about things when it affects them directly. And that is a sad state we're in, right? I think there's a million elements to that and how we got here. But at the end of the day, we really have to break that thinking, because if it's happening to you, eventually it's going to happen to somebody I care about. Yeah. All right, no matter what it is. And I need to care about you. We're going to keep saying this. People over profit. Humanity is going to win.
You're seeing also with COVID, you're seeing also, like I said earlier, a lot of humbling. So you may have had people that were here, I'm gonna go that way too. People that were up here, but now a lot of them being brought down here. So now they're like, oh boy, now they're seeing what it's like. Yeah. You're seeing a lot of that.
Again, it affected them directly.
You know what I'm saying? Right. Exactly. Until melanated folks became the face of the disease. Right. Now we reopen Atlanta. Yeah. Right. Let's reopen New Orleans. So that's the reality. That's where it stings, So
we actually spoke to someone about this last week, and we were speaking about the racial component of that, right? Opening back up Atlanta and what they thought about it. And what was told to me in their opinion, they said in the state of Georgia, they did not expect the amount of people to file for unemployment that did. So that money wasn't being readily pumped out. So it was like, okay, let's get back to business. Let's get back so we don't have to, keep this unemployment train going. Let's get back to opening back up, the money. But it just, as they talked about it, they thought through it and they said, wow, it's really profit over people. And I was like, that went back to the first part of our discussion, like that was really it. And like you said, right? When we become the face of the pandemic, it's like, oh, well, the curve is flattening. But you have whole communities that
are suffering.
No, those numbers are growing. And again, there was not enough testing. So we didn't know what was what. We don't know the real numbers at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My parents just got tested this week because now in the state of Florida is readily available. You can go whether you have symptoms or not, and get the testing. And my parents just did it just because they're older and they just wanted to get it checked out. But I asked them about it and they said that there weren't as many people getting tested as they thought.
Yeah. They said there's like no line. They announced it in the morning in the news. There's no line. And then any procedure that you need at the hospital, they reopened elective surgery for one.
Right.
My mom needs a routine procedure done and she has to be tested and cleared before, scheduling. So, it's like taken seriously in some aspects, but not enough.
Right.
And it's funny enough, it's almost, and I think this is part of the struggle is, because if you look at our individually or collectively, our friendship group, it kind of looks like the United Nations. Like we don't subscribe to a lot of the nonsense or who you can or can't make money with, who you can or cannot go to dinner with, who you can't, you know what I mean? The crew is the crew. But the crew is really the crew when they stand with you, when your community is hurting. Yeah. And it's really something that I think that we face that every day. You go through your timeline, you're like, oh, whoa,
right.
Or, or they post something half-hearted, about, some kind of senseless death or something that really stings, you know what I mean? Because, I have a Black father, a Black husband, a Black son, a Black brother, and God forbid, you can't, there's the aftermath and recovering from that. That's really, that's difficult. And would everybody in my phone book on my timeline, would they stand with me if something happened,
And Brian, we talk about it all the time, right? Because I know I have some friends that they have subscribed to the page and they may listen to a podcast or two and they'll call me and say, well, tell me about the podcast and like what your platform is and who you're going after is your demographic. And I say, oh, that's very simple. Human beings, because we all need to care about the same things. All right. And I hope that my friends, if I have something that's painful to me or important to me, I hope that you empathize, sympathize, whatever you may be with that cause as well. And are willing to help me move that forward in whatever way that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and we sacrifice ourselves for it, may mean a little slower growth, may mean being called out. But when there's the mission of honesty, the mission of truth, the mission of love, it'll wash out.
Yes.
So I wanted to, I had one other point really that I thought was, it kind of dovetails off this perfectly, right? So we're talking about, kind of the one band, one sound, and, is everybody going to be with you, disposability. And oftentimes when you have, because we want to create change, right? So one of the main ways to do that is through legislation, and that's why I really dig the organizations that, hey, how do we make this bill become a law, that really bring things to the forefront that protect us. And then you have, let's just say, when you have, what am I thinking about? It's like, let's say affirmative action, for example, right? So once you have affirmative action, which there's a need for, because, slaves built the country. Let's talk about
Right.
it. At least we've never been apologized or acknowledged, for the contributions, right? But then there's this this occurrence of intersectionality, whereas everybody who's deemed a quote unquote minority may benefit more than from the intended minority that should benefit. So if you're a white woman, then you may get more because you're categorized the same. So then you have, this is kind of ties into where we were talking about the Asian racism and things like that. So when you cross over like a disability or race, sexual orientation, gender identity, nationality, there's a segment of all those subgroups that kind of cross, but then how do you kind of strip that away and still progress? How do you get to the core of where we're all affected, stay on that page, stay unified, don't, you build up a cause like Me Too and then it's stripped away based on race. How do we not do that? Because this is not a Black agenda. This is an American agenda. This is remember, the economy is worldwide now. You know what I mean? There's not a section of your business that is not in another country.
Right. Yeah.
So we all do business online, and it is what it is. My family's multicultural. So, my sister doesn't even live in this country, so how do we do that? How do we not get caught up in that intersectionality where, the people who need the help don't even get it? That I want to be one of our agenda items.
Is it even possible though? Right? Because then we start getting hit with the other backlash of, oh, you really don't care about this, you just care about this group of people that are affected by this, right? And that's the easy answer for me is I don't know, right? Like that's why we're having the conversation, because this is something that we really have to delve into in a deeper level.
Yeah. I want you guys shoot us an email, shoot us a contact from manyhandspodcast.com and hit us up on the contact page. We want to talk about this some more. There's no way to summarize everything, but I'm going to let the rest of you guys talk as well. But we don't profess to have all the answers, but we do have all the passion and we do commit to getting to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because kind of look at a boat that is sinking that's got many holes in it, right? It's hard to stay focused on one because you might make some traction, get a little patch on one, and then there's another hole over here, and then you lose your focus and you go over here. So it's hard. You have to stay focused on the task at hand. And almost, it's tough. How do you strip it away? Sometimes you just have to call it out, call it what it is. Hey, look, I'm here for this group and this group alone right now. Because when you try and fix it for everybody, not everybody's on the same playing field. It's not an equal field right now. So when you're trying to fix it for everybody, naturally there are some folks that don't necessarily need the help. They're going to get that help as well. And when that help is being moved to a group that doesn't necessarily need it, there's a group that does need it that's not getting the same level of attention that it needs. So it's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me to answer as well. I guess kind of piggybacking off B there. I guess, you definitely have to stay focused and know what you're aiming for. And you don't want to get in the habit of having to explain yourself either, as you're going through these motions, because you can get so focused on trying to explain that, trying to defend it versus working towards it. So I think that's another key when trying to get everybody included. You just can't. I don't know if that's possible at this point. You just can't. You got to focus on one thing in hand and hopefully it grows and develops. But you're going to have people that are pushing back, asking questions. Just stay focused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The sting is not the same.
Right. No, absolutely right. And like we talked about before we even got, kind of on the air, is we talked about, the possibility of these, of leaders taking specific roles in the agendas and pushing that forward individually, and then it collectively benefiting everybody. But we just don't we don't have that. I don't know how to get to that point other than us creating that own table. We always talk about getting a seat at the table. Well, why get a seat at the table when you create your own table, right? So how do we create that table with those power brokers that are willing to be as passionate? Because just look at us as an example. We all have businesses that, we're pulled in many different directions. And then on top of that, you have personal. that you're dealing with as well. And we're not the only ones dealing with that. Everybody is, for the most part. Yeah. But it's just one of those things. It's like, how do you stay focused on one particular thing? Because there was a book, it's called The One Thing. And I've talked about it before. And, it's, okay, you focus on these 7 things, but when you focus on these 7, you really don't move your agenda like you would. But if you focus on that one thing and only put your energy into that one thing, it's amazing what you can accomplish.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I you know what, I read that book as well on a referral from you, Twan. And you're right. I mean, it is definitely something where if you can lock in, multitasking. We all talk about being great at multitasking and wanting to be great at multitasking, where sometimes you just have to be good at being singular focused. Be able to lock in, knock out one task, and move on to the next task. And you will look. You'll realize that you'll move the ball forward even further when you're doing it one thing at a time versus trying to multitask and move, a bunch at the same time.
Absolutely. I would also want to say, or I am going to say, is you have to be prepared for people coming at you. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're working towards something specifically, something great, and it's going to be powerful in the end, you're going to be met with resistance. So kind of get that in your head, like, hey, think about all the great leaders that we have had, or people, you can think about athletes, anybody that's doing something great is met with resistance and ridicule. So you have to be prepared for that. And like we all keep saying, just stay focused on, keep your eye on the prize.
And really quick, Rio, that point right there has never been so evident. Than we're watching The Last Dance right now. Mm-hmm. And we talk about Colin Kaepernick, losing his right to be an NFL quarterback and a professional athlete because he stood up for something peacefully, by the way. He stood up for something that he believed in, right? That did not affect him directly. Like, it didn't impact him directly, right? This guy's making millions of dollars, but he felt the need to speak out. And when we look at Last Dance, Craig Hodges, who was on the first Bulls teams, when they won, he went to the White House in a dashiki, right?
Like, I remember that.
He gave, I believe it was George Bush at the time, the first George Bush, he gave Senior a 7-page plan on how to address certain issues in the Black community. And and he was one of the ones that spoke out in the NBA and ended up getting blackballed from the NBA, right? Yeah. So, you just look at you look at these folks that they don't look at it as sacrifice. They look at it as purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
And when people don't use their platform, when people don't use their platform, everybody comes for them. And then when they do, then, Tyler Perry is this. And I'm like, you can't win.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? But that's the thing. You have to be, I was talking to somebody that's going through something rough right now because they're doing something similar, but for them, right, it's very impactful. And we were just talking about it, and I said, you were built for this, right? If you weren't built for it, you wouldn't have had the ideas to do it. You wouldn't have had the energy to put it together. You're built for it. So take those licks, because it's going to come back around, because the man upstairs he is just, right? Like, it will come back around for you. You'll be okay.
What's that old statement that everybody's mom used to tell them, or at least I know my mother did? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yep.
Preach.
Yep. You got to take a stand. Stand for what you believe in.
And you know what? Something else too, right? Just drop another gem, another quote, right? The time is always right to do what's right. And almost at whatever cost, Now,
was that Martin as well?
Martin Luther King as well.
Yeah.
Next episode will be brought to you by Malcolm X. No. I think we're at a good spot where I ask a question of you guys, see where your head is at. In case you hear the background, I don't even know if I'll be able to edit it out. I'm in Toddlerville. Okay.
It's life. This is life, people.
Yeah. So what we realized is that we just have to work with kids now, and it's every day is bring your kids to work day.
Right.
I had a picture of my daughter Rain, and she was underneath my seat So I couldn't roll forward or backward. That's where she wanted to be. So I'm like, okay, well, that's my working condition. It's kind of crazy. So, I always try to think of a question that gets, the question's a lot easier than the answers. I want everybody to know that. That's why I ask the questions. So my question is, so we have this mission of Many Hands. We want to do something. And so my question is, if you were going to change the name of, these are my thought partners, right? So they know I go crazy, right? If you were going to change the name of this show, what would you change it to and why?
Ooh, man. I love these. I don't have an answer just yet. I'm going to come up with one. I love this.
They behind the scenes, y'all, they hate me. They come for me.
By the way, y'all, we never know these questions until she asks them on the podcast.
They've called me some things, they try to revoke my black card, all sorts of things.
But it's magical though. It's magical what you do. I will say, I think, you guys, we talk, all of us believe this, and we've talked about it a lot, and I've mentioned it a lot on this podcast. I think the last 2 months, I've really been over this people over profit. I just really believe as a country we have lost our way. And I think we need to be constantly reminded, which is, again, why we name this podcast Many Hands, right? Because, look, we are stronger together than apart.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
Respect, yes.
I'm writing it down, right?
Or humanity. One of the two. Humanity, maybe just humanity. I don't know. It's crazy out here.
Yeah. Let's see. What about B? What about you, Rio? Would you change the name?
I love Many Hands, so we're just talking about just another name, or just
what if?
I got two answers. I got two. One is more comical, but it has a purpose. So one would be walk it like I talk it, or walk it like we talk it. And the other one probably would be action before progress.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh. Something along those lines.
Or actionable progress.
Actionable. There we
go. There you go.
But I just want to stop real quick.
See the thought partners? Thought partner.
Like I talk it. Hey, walk it like I talk. I'm sorry. I just wanted to, we couldn't let that just go by. Let's be clear, all right? Walk it like I talk it. Hey, all right. I'm sorry. I'm ignorant. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Just so everybody knows, the YouTube channel is suspended until we get haircuts. All right. B, do you have anything? So nobody's going to actually see us walk it like we talk it, but work with us, people. Work with us. Imagine it.
Man, these guys got me. Ooh, there's some heat in this room right now.
We don't have to. You don't have to. It's just something to think about.
It's a great thought, though.
It is a great thought. I like what we're doing is we're building, and we're constantly building something, right? Whether it's building a business, building this group, building this platform, and so. I don't know. I'm thinking about thought builders or power builders or something along those lines.
Okay.
Because you can go a lot of different ways. You can go wealth builders. You can go a lot of different directions. But since on this platform we tackle a lot of different things from business to social consciousness, power builders.
I like it. I like it. And what people don't understand is some of the things that we talk about where it's on the social side of it, it has a strong economic impact, and, we talk the haves and have not. All of that is the life cycle of business. And until, there's always going to be like that pushback. While you can't let it hinder, the contracts you sign and the next moves, like that's never the objective, because you can get, swamped in the swamp, so to speak. You can get covered in mud easily. So how do you make sure that we keep clean feet, clean off somebody else, and keep moving? And that's kind of who we are. So what we have laid on the table, and you guys jump in if I miss something. So action steps, what we have to figure out, and we'll post these on the website, some things that we want to do. voter registration, continue to push that, continue to work with organizations at there's the focus. I don't believe in starting something new for no reason for the sake of you putting your name next to new initials. You know, we run enough businesses to do that, but we can reach out, like, let's keep it real. We can reach out to, you know, a local business, or even the our voting registration. Can't think of it. You know, who's running that, right?
Yeah.
Reach
right.
out to them and see what we can do, because I've done that before for other organizations, and they'll train you, they'll set you up, they'll send you packets, you have your registration on a number, or a number on your packet, so they know who registered that person. So you have to know how to do it right, because there's a lot of voter fraud. That's a whole nother topic in and of itself. The gerrymandering that's going on, how people are changing the laws, how, you know, people are taking away vote by mail, all sorts of things, absentee ballots, and that's to protect their personal interests. So that's a whole, you know, so it's not just what we touched on here. There are further implications. We talked about well, we didn't, but what I wrote down was when we talked about the PPP, you know, what we're doing about that. I've seen a lot of organizations start producing masks, and not like not like the 3Ms that are, you know, commissioned to do it by the government, but a lot of mom and pops and small businesses are doing it. They're also, you know, adding the necessary sophistication for the filters, because, you know, you just walking around in a cotton mask is not cool. You know, breathing in COVID, that's not cool, but you look good. We're not doing that. We're talking about supporting organizations that are producing the masks that people need to stay safe. So I think that there are quite a few out there now. You know, maybe putting a list together and having that resource on the site is a good idea. Just Mercy, Brian Stevenson. Well, that's the name of his book, but what's the name of his organization, B?
The Equal Justice Initiative.
Thank you.
The
EJI. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Maybe
EJI.
reaching out to the EJI, see what happens. We have to do a field trip. That we're big on field trips. We have to do a field trip down to his monument and museum that he's creating down there in Alabama. Yeah. So that's a big deal. And then, you know, something that Rio touched on was issues over trends. Like, let's, you know, we're not here for the fancy. We're not here for the show, and we're not here for the sex appeal. We're here for the work. You know what I mean? So a lot of things that people, the magic that's missing, the progress, the next level that's missing, is hiding in the work. So let's go to work, you know? And that's, we believe that. And what do I have to say? Grand opening?
Grand closing.
Okay, yes, my fellas.